There is a rule about money. A rule so old it predates banks. It predates Wall Street. It predates every financial system you have ever been taught. And for centuries, Jewish families have passed it down quietly, from grandparents to grandchildren, in kitchens, around dinner tables, in whispers. Today, I am going to tell you exactly what it is. And when I do, you will finally understand why certain families build wealth that survives generations, while others work their entire lives and end up with almost nothing. Stay with me, because this changes everything. Let me ask you something honest. Have you ever looked at your bank account at the end of the month and just stared? You worked hard, you showed up, you sacrificed weekends, sleep, time with people you love, and somehow the numbers still do not add up. There is always more month left than money. Maybe you tried budgeting, maybe you read the books, maybe you followed the advice from the experts on TV. And still something feels off. Like there is a leak somewhere in your financial life that you cannot find, no matter how hard you look. I need you to hear me say this clearly. It is not your fault. You were never taught the real rules, the rules that actually govern how money moves, how it grows, how it stays, and how it multiplies across generations. I want to tell you about a woman named Diane. Diane worked 2 jobs for 15 years. A nurse by day, cleaning offices 3 nights a week. She was not lazy, she was not foolish, but every time she managed to save a little, something happened. The car broke down, a medical bill arrived, the roof needed repair. It was like the money was running away from her. And meanwhile, she would look around her community, and she would see other families who did not seem to work any harder than she did, buying homes, sending their children to good schools, building something real. What did they know that she did not? That is the question that changes everything. The answer is not luck. It is not connections. It is not that certain people were born with an advantage. The answer is ancient. There are principles about money, about cycles, about how wealth actually moves through time, that have been preserved in Jewish tradition for over 3,000 years. Principles tested through empires, persecutions, exiles, and economic collapses. And at the heart of these principles is something called the 777 rule. Let me walk you through each part, slowly, because when you truly understand this, the way you think about money will never be the same. The first 7 is about the cycle of work and rest. My grandmother came to this country with almost nothing, 2 suitcases, a little money sewn into the lining of her coat, no English, no connections, no degree. Within 10 years, she owned a small shop. Within 20, she owned the building the shop was in. And when she passed away, she left enough behind to give every one of her grandchildren a real start in life. When I was 12, I asked her how she did it. She looked at me and said, "The secret is not in how hard you work. The secret is in when you stop." I thought she was joking. She was not. In the book of Exodus, chapter 20, God commands 6 days of work and then a complete stop on the 7th. Most people read that as a religious rule about going to synagogue. My grandmother understood something deeper. She understood that the commandment to rest is also a financial strategy. Here is what happens when you work 7 days a week without stopping. You lose perspective. You make desperate decisions. You say yes to bad deals because you are too exhausted to see clearly. You spend money trying to comfort yourself from the burnout. You cannot spot opportunities because your mind is foggy. My grandmother closed her shop every Friday evening. Other shop owners on her street stayed open. They laughed at her. They said she was losing money. But because she rested, she thought more clearly for the 6 days she worked. She made better decisions. She noticed things her competitors missed. The Talmud teaches that what is set aside to honor the cycle of rest is not subtracted from your wealth. It is provided separately. It is bonus provision. Here is your first action. Work in cycles of 6 and 1. 6 days of focused, intentional effort. 1 day of complete rest where you step back, review your finances, and reconnect with your direction. If you are working 7 days a week right now, you are not getting ahead. You are burning fuel without navigating. This one practice alone has protected more families from financial ruin than any investment strategy ever invented. But this is only the beginning. The second 7 is about something called the Shemitah cycle. In the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 15, the Torah commands something that sounds almost impossible to modern ears. At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release. Every creditor shall release what he has lent. Every 7 years, debts were forgiven, loans were released, the financial slate was wiped clean. Banks do not want you to know about this principle, because the entire modern banking system is built on the exact opposite idea. They want you in debt forever, paying minimums for decades, believing that carrying debt is just normal, just part of life. But in Jewish tradition, debt was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to be cyclical. There was a man in our community, I will call him David. David was a successful real estate investor, properties, income, respect, and then 2008 happened. By the end of it, David was carrying over $2 million in debt. He could not sleep. His marriage was falling apart. He told us he sat in his car one morning in the parking lot of his office and could not make himself go inside. He was paralyzed. That evening, he went to speak with his rabbi. And the rabbi said something strange. He said, "David, you are in your personal Shemitah year. This is not a punishment. This is a release." The rabbi explained that the Shemitah principle is not about literally forgiving every debt. It is about understanding that every 7 years or every major cycle, you need to do a complete audit of your financial life and release what is not working. The deals that are draining you, the investments you hold onto out of pride, the business relationships that cost more than they bring in, the subscriptions, the memberships, the obligations that have attached themselves to your life like barnacles on a ship, slowing you down without you even realizing it. David went home that night and made a list, every financial commitment he had, every payment, every obligation, and for each one he asked himself one question. If I were starting fresh today, would I enter into this again? Everything that got a no, he began releasing. He sold 2 properties at a loss. He ended a business partnership that had been bleeding him for years. He canceled subscriptions he had been paying for out of pure habit. It took 18 months. But at the end, David was carrying almost no debt. His income was lower, but his expenses were so much lower that for the first time in years, he was actually keeping more than he spent. Within 5 years, he had rebuilt his portfolio, this time with no debt at all. Here is your second action. This week, sit down with a piece of paper. Write down every single financial obligation you carry, every debt, every subscription, every recurring charge, everything that takes money from you automatically. Then ask yourself David's question. If I were starting fresh, would I sign up for this again? Be honest, be ruthless. Because the things you are holding onto out of habit or fear or pride, those are the very things keeping you from your next level. Now pay close attention, because this third 7 is the one that changes everything. The third 7 is about giving, but not the way you have been taught. In the book of Genesis, chapter 28, Jacob makes a vow to God after his dream of a ladder reaching all the way to heaven. He says, "Of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you." Now most people know about tithing. Give 10%. That idea exists in many traditions. But here is what almost nobody talks about. Look at when Jacob made this vow. He made it at a moment of total uncertainty. He was running for his life. His own brother wanted to kill him. He had no home, no wealth. He was sleeping on the ground with a stone as his pillow. He had absolutely nothing. And in that moment of nothing, he promised to give away 10% of everything he would ever receive. This is the third seven. And the Zohar, the central text of Kabbalah, teaches something remarkable about this. It says the act of giving opens a channel, a pipeline, and this pipeline does not flow only one direction. When you give, you create an opening through which blessing flows back. But here is the part that no bank or financial institution will ever tell you. It is not just about giving 10%. It is about giving it first. Before you pay your bills, before you pay your rent, before you pay anything else, the first portion goes out. In Jewish thought, the Hebrew word for charity is tzedakah, and it does not come from a word that means generosity. It comes from the word tzedek, meaning justice, righteousness, the correct order of how money is supposed to flow. Giving is not optional, it is the right order of things. I knew a woman named Ruth, a widow. Her husband had passed away and left her with very little, a small pension, some savings. Everyone in the community worried about her. But Ruth did something that confused everyone. Every single month without fail she gave. Not a lot. Sometimes just $20, sometimes $50. People would say, "Ruth, you cannot afford to give. Keep that for yourself." And Ruth would say something I carry with me to this day. She would say, "I cannot afford not to give. When I give, I am telling God that I trust Him to provide, and He has never broken His promise to me." Ruth lived to 93 years old. She never went hungry, never lost her home, and when she passed away, they discovered her small savings had grown steadily over the decades. She had invested wisely, lived simply, and never stopped giving. The Talmud says it plainly, "Tithe so that you will become wealthy." The rabbis were not being poetic. They were stating a financial principle tested across thousands of years. Here is your third action. Starting with your very next paycheck, take 7%. 7 because this is the 777 rule, and set it aside for giving, not after your bills, before. I know your mind is already listing every reason you cannot do it. Remember Jacob, sleeping on a rock, nothing to his name, and he became one of the wealthiest men in the ancient world, the father of 12 tribes, the patriarch of a nation. Start with 7%, give it to someone who needs it, and watch what begins to happen over the next 7 months. Now let me bring all three together, because when you see how they connect, the real power of this teaching becomes clear. The first 7 says rest every 7th day, so your mind is sharp, your decisions are wise, and your work is focused rather than frantic. The second 7 says every major cycle, audit everything, release what is not working, and enter your next season without the weight of dead obligations dragging behind you. The third 7 says give 7% of everything you receive before you do anything else, and you open a channel of blessing that no bank, no recession, no economic crisis can close. Do you see the pattern? Rest, release, give. Rest, release, give. This is not just a financial strategy. This is the rhythm of creation itself. God created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th. The land worked for 6 years and rested on the 7th. The wealth that flows into your life needs the same rhythm. It needs space, it needs release, it needs to circulate. Money that you grip tightly suffocates. Money that you manage wisely, release regularly, and circulate generously grows in ways that defy ordinary logic. I have watched families practice these 3 principles for decades. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, the families who rest, who regularly audit and release, and who give before they spend, those families prosper. Not just financially. Their relationships are stronger. Their children grow up with a sense of security and generosity that carries into the next generation. This is what generational wealth really means. It is not just the money you leave behind. It is the wisdom you pass down. And right now, in this moment, you are receiving wisdom that has sustained an entire people through every hardship the world has ever thrown at them. Your season of struggle does not have to continue. The pattern can change. But it requires you to stop doing what everyone else is doing and start following a different rhythm. The rhythm of 7. If this video touched something deep inside you, drop in the comments, "I choose the rhythm of 7." When you write it, it becomes a commitment between you and your future self. And if you know someone right now who works hard but cannot seem to get ahead, share this with them. You might be the one who changes everything for them. Sometimes one piece of wisdom at the right moment redirects the course of an entire life. Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham. Blessed are you, Lord, shield of Abraham. The same God who shielded Abraham, who prospered Jacob, who sustained Ruth, sees you right now. Trust the rhythm. Rest, release, give. And watch what happens next.